Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Better Basics Podcast, the realest fitness podcast on the planet. Dylan, I got to say, you're looking well this week. How are you feeling?
Yeah, I'm feeling better. Still pretty debilitating. This was a pretty good little muscle pull. I think I've come to a diagnosis. I think
Okay.
it's my butt. It's my butt. I think it's my piriformis. I'm going to see a physical
Oh, well, that was
therapist
your
on.
original diagnosis.
It was, yeah. I'm going to see a physical therapist on Thursday, to find out for sure. But my wife's a physical therapist. She works more in hospital acute care, but this is her assessment. Is that I pulled my piriformis, and the inflammation is putting pressure on my sciatic nerve, which is why it's so painful. So it's been a rough week. It hurts more to sit than it does to walk around. And I'm sitting on a heating pad now, which is helping quite a bit. But yeah, man, it sucks.
Yeah. Were there any nuggets that you've been implementing from our last episode? I mean, you got the heat going, which I know is something we talked about. Is there anything else that you've been doing that has been helping?
I've been doing some light movement, some light stretching up to the point of pain. But beyond that, I've been pretty sedentary. It's just trying to get my steps in still, but I miss the gym. I miss the gym more for the mental benefits than anything else. It's that time of year where it's dark and sad and yeah, I want to get a workout in real bad. So hopefully it resolves itself here pretty soon.
Wasn't getting rid of daylight savings time like the one thing that our government has unanimously agreed upon in the last like 8 years, and then just like nothing came of that?
Yeah, that's how government works. That's why nothing came of it.
Because the government decided it. If it was just something that the people decided and we unified on, then we would have real change.
Yeah, because the government agreed on it. They're not in this game to agree on things. If they agree on things and get things done, then they don't have the power over us that they do.
Ooh, wow, that's deep. That's deep. All right, back to our lane, fitness. I saw that you were hurting last week, and so I thought that the podcast really needed a win, and so I know you saw this, I'm sure a handful of our listeners have seen this by now, but I have officially completed my goal for the year with some time to spare. It was as you suggest. So for those of you that don't know, though I'm sure everybody does, I've been talking about benching 315 this year, just one rep, and I got it. And you were right. It was I tried right after Thanksgiving, and those extra calories were, I think, what got it done for me.
You're a beast, man. It's massive. I hurt my butt, my back squatting 335 pounds, and you pressed 315 with your chest. That's insane.
Yeah, well, it
Congrats, man.
feels awesome. It was one of those things. It's just like I think the biggest takeaway for me is just like how good it feels to accomplish a goal. When you set something and then you work at it and you fail at it and there's moments of doubt, and then you ultimately come through. I mean, like even better than actually, achieving that number was the feeling of accomplishment that I got because it was something that I said I was going to do and I actually did it. And I think, that there's so much value in doing stuff like that. And so no, it was awesome, and now I'm here to officially announce what the goal is. Oh, actually, do I save it? Do I save it
Yeah, man.
for?
Yeah, man. You're getting a bit early in the content game here. You got to save
Okay,
that.
all right. I'm going to save it. I'm going to save the goal for our New Year's resolution episode. I like it.
Yeah, no,
That's what they call a tease in the
we
business.
we don't call them resolutions at the Better Basics podcast. So
Oh, that's true. Just goals. Shit we're going to
yeah,
work on.
shit, we're gonna do. Yeah.
I like that. All right. Let's transition to the hot topic today. To get us started, we have an article. This is another men's health article. This one is a bit more recent than our friend the Potato Man. And this is from November of 2024. It says the title: Experts say, quote, clean eating has a dirty little secret. So this article, pretty much just talks about the not not the dangers of clean eating, but why it's not probably not the best idea to like refer to it as such.
Yeah, so this is a bit more editorial. It's not so based in statistics or hard science, but rather a dietitian kind of reflecting on the terminology clean eating. One of the statistics it does point out that I thought was super interesting was that 11% of Americans say they follow a clean eating diet. And the reason I think that's so interesting, and the article gets into this some, is there really is no definition of what clean eating or clean foods are. It's basically whatever you decide it is. So it sounds smart in theory, and it probably sounds like a good idea to the 11% of people that identify with eating that way, right? Like eat more whole foods, eat less ultra processed foods. But the point that the dietitian in the article is making is one that really resonates with me, which is in practice, assigning labels to foods can be bad for you in the end, for both your dietary health and your mental health. So I think we can agree that eating more plants, eating lots of fiber, eating quality protein, and decreasing the amount of ultra processed foods is absolutely a good idea. But focusing on clean eating, quote clean eating, can easily slide into like these harmful fixations. It can lead to orthorexia, it can lead to aiming for some illusion of perfection and then going through the on the diet, off the diet, roller coaster over and over and over again. And I think the point she's ultimately getting at, which is so important, is we really shouldn't be making our eating habits our identity. Like by saying I'm eating clean or I'm not eating clean, leads you to believe that clean equals good and not clean equals bad. And then in turn, when the person eats in a way that they feel is not clean, they identify as bad, right? And a lot of times that leads to scrapping the healthy eating altogether or having some negative impact on mental health. So it's really an
Yeah,
interesting way of thinking about it.
I mean in our house, like how we talk about food is just that there is no unhealthy. There's no, I mean, not there is no bad foods. Every food has a purpose, even if that purpose is just because it tastes fucking awesome. Like it can be that simple. Now, with that, you need to understand that that might not be the nerds gummy clusters might not be be a staple of your diet just because they taste awesome, and starting to, look at food for what it can do for your body. But yeah, like those labels, I mean, they feel so dangerous. And talking about labels, I know personally, I fell down like the certified organic label, rabbit hole myself, where all of a sudden, I'm looking at my grocery bill, trying to figure out how it's so damn high and realizing that I am financially stressing myself out and making grocery shopping something that should be an enjoyable experience a miserable one, because I was either feeling guilty about spending so much money on organic food or feeling guilty that I wasn't spending the money on organic food. And, it's just one of those things where at the end of the day, yes, if you are in the position of privilege where you know, you can use those, like marketing tools as guidelines for how you eat, that's fantastic. However, understand that it is just that. Like terms like certified organic and such have become such just simply marketing terms, that if it's going to stress you out or put you in a poor financial position to eat that way, then I mean there are better ways to live.
Yeah, and at least with certified organic, it actually means something. Like the big concern for me here, and everything you said is true, and I agree with it. But like the person who's doing the eating gets to determine essentially what's clean and what's not clean. And so all of a sudden,
Oh,
to your
sure.
point about no foods being bad, you start assigning bad to things that may have some value, may not really be, they're not, maybe not super healthy in conventional terms, but who we identify as is who we become. And so if we're assigning certain things as bad and then therefore feeling like or not clean, and then therefore that not clean leads us to believe that we're not eating clean, we're going to eat less clean. And it's all just so opaque and doesn't really mean anything at all. So I think it's very rare that you'll find a person that follows a quote unquote clean eating diet that never eats anything that in their mind would fall into the category of not clean or less clean. And it just creates this confusion, this diet roller coaster, and this risk that you start to assess your behaviors as bad and then therefore feel bad about yourself.
Yeah. So I mean, I guess like the moral of the story here is eat what makes you feel good and strive to eat the healthiest, most nutritious foods possible, but avoid morality labels when it comes to the food that you're putting in your body. It is not food choices are never moral choices.
Yeah, and look for the good in everything you eat. Like don't let that be an excuse to eat nothing but pizza and cake, but certain foods have value for different reasons, right? And I think it's a good lesson for life to try to find the good in almost everything. But when you choose to have that piece of cake, choose it because it tastes good and it's a treat and you're going to enjoy it. Maybe it'll give you an extra calorie bump for your next workout or whatever it is, instead of assessing it as bad or dirty and letting that then dictate how you feel about having made that decision.
For sure. All right, let's move on to our next segment. This is worth it, and Dylan, I'm bringing this worth it here not as something that I have in my house. It's something that I've seen in other people's houses, and when we were, kind of going over the show today, you said it's something that you guys have currently in your house. This is a happy light or a vitamin D light. So basically, what if you don't know what these lights are, these light therapy lamps, they are for generally for the treatment of seasonal affective disorder, and are designed to mimic natural sunlight, which is something that obviously, I mean, you mentioned it earlier in the show. It gets dark at 4:30 now, so it's something that we're obviously lacking in these winter months, and this seasonal affective disorder is very real in a lot of people, and so it's just something that I was just looking at, not because I necessarily really feel like I suffer from seasonal affective disorder, but because I'm always looking for ways to make my home life happier. And so I was kind of looking at these lights and wondering if what kind of value they do have. So I mean, you're the guy with experience. What do you think?
Yeah, I don't. Is a vitamin D lamp a thing? Like, I'm not aware of
Well,
lamps
no,
that
okay,
emit.
so yeah, no, these happy lights or like light therapy lamps are no, they're not termed vitamin D lamps. You're right. That was a term that I just kind of coined.
Yeah, because that would be dope. If there was like a lamp that you could use to give you more vitamin D, that would be really cool. But yeah, I think like you said, it
Right,
emits a
because that
light
you're
that
right. You're exactly right because that's not what these do.
right. So they're just mimicking natural sunlight to help improve your mood. I do very much feel like I have an undiagnosed case of seasonal affective disorder. Like I get really down. this time of year. So and Courtney does as well. So we purchased one last year. I mean, I think all people to some degree, this time of year impacts them in some way. Like naturally, our bodies just crave more warmth and more light. And so we put one in our bedroom next to our little table and the little chair in there. And what I've been doing in the mornings is when I wake up, go through my little morning routine, and then I'll sit down and read or journal for about 30 minutes and sit by that lamp. Still generally dark outside. I'm not going to sit here and suggest that it's had some sort of transformational impact on my life, that I've like noticed it having this profound effect on my mood. But that being said, I think it costs like $40, and sitting next to some bright light in the morning for 30 minutes can't be having much of a negative impact, and maybe helping a little bit more than I even know. So I do think for the minimal investment, to have that exposure to that light for a period of time in the morning every day is good. I think it's a good thing to have. A lot of what we talk about on this podcast is really like a cost benefit thing, right? Like there's certain things you can make significant investment in that'll have very little impact, and therefore, while there might be some incremental, the small rock type stuff, improvement to your life, probably not worth spending the hundreds or thousands of dollars to do it. But when we're talking sub $50 for something that may have some minimal impact on your overall mood this time of year, from my perspective, it's absolutely worth having.
Is it a light that you use like regularly, or is it just like you use it just in the morning, like when you're like during your morning routine, or is it like a multi-purpose? Like, I guess my question is, like, if somebody is going like looking for a new light, is this something they can use regularly, or is it just something that they're going to use like sit in front of, to get the mimicked sunlight benefits?
Well, it will have some impact on the circadian rhythm through the light exposure considerations. So it's probably not something I'd use like once the sun goes down, as like a source of light after dark. But yeah, I mean, I don't really have time in my day to sit in front of it any more than that. I certainly could put one next to my desk at work and maybe get some more benefit from it. But it's just a square tabletop lamp that essentially just shines in my face. There may be other forms, like light bulbs or otherwise, that you could put into lamps, or I'm not so sure. I haven't looked into that too much. Mine's just a square lamp that essentially just shines on my face every morning for 30 minutes. So, yeah, I mean, you could use it more. I could find ways to use it more, but that's just what I've been doing recently. I think the
Yeah. So I mean,
prescription's like 30 minutes a day.
yeah, and that is the big thing that I noticed with research is it is something that if you want the benefits, you need to be using it regularly. So,
Yeah.
like, if you have one, have it set up somewhere, make it somewhere that it's actually going to be accessible and usable. Otherwise, yeah, it's not going to be worth it. But yeah, I mean, it sounds like, for the cost, if you are feeling a little down in the wintertime. Now, I would argue I would probably start. They're like the big rocks that we want to like look at first, like exercise and nutrition and all that stuff. But if you are just looking for another kind of like low barrier, like easy way to to try and help your body out in these tough winter months, it sounds like this is a good option.
Yeah, I mean, we'll have stretches of weeks in the winter here where we don't see the sunshine. So, yeah, I think it's a inexpensive investment, and from my perspective, it's worth it. It's worth it if you feel like you're down a bit these months of the year.
Sweet. All right. Let's transition to the main course of the day, and we're bringing back everybody's favorite episode. It is What Say You, and this is where we get to go back and forth and hear each other's opinions on things that we might, some of it maybe we have a good guess. Sometimes I like to throw something at Dylan that I know is gonna piss you off a little bit. and I know you like to do the same to me. So, how do we want to do this this time? Do you want to go first, or do you want me to?
I want you to go first. Um, we got the Spotify Wrapped metrics for the end of the year for the Better Basics podcast, and
Okay.
uh, I guess first we should say thank you to everybody that's given us their time and listening. I think we were generally impressed with the reception, the number of listeners, the number of people that are listening to this regularly. Pretty surprised by. So thank you for your support. And these episodes are always super popular. So we've been doing these every 6 or 7 episodes or so. And I think it's just a fun way for us to kind of candidly, off the cuff, approach different topics. So I'm going to throw a few at you. The first of which is a bit of a follow up to one that we discussed previously. So on a previous What Say You About, we talked about the 30-30-30 method, which was made famous by, I think, Tim Ferriss's 30-hour work week or 30-minute or whatever it was. And then further famous by Gary Brecka, which was eating 30 grams of protein within 30 minutes of waking, followed by 30 minutes of low intensity exercise. And we talked about why that's kind of silly and some of the nuances around that. But I saw somebody suggest a diet play off of the 30-30-30 method, which is the 30-30-3 diet. So I want to know, what say you about the 30-30-3 diet, which is getting 30 grams of protein for breakfast, getting 30 grams of fiber per day, and getting 3 servings of probiotic foods daily.
Okay. This seems a heck of a lot more like attainable and sustainable. So what was the first? It was 30 grams of protein for your first meal,
Yes.
which I think is just a good. I think that's a good baseline. I think that's a good place to be for most people. Now, if you are somebody that struggles with protein intake, or just like hunger first thing in the morning, this is certainly a guideline. But if you are a breakfast eater, I like having a high protein breakfast that sets you up really well for the rest of the day and gets you out in front of those protein goals. The 30 grams of fiber, what is the like recommended like fiber intake in the day? You're our fiber guy.
Yeah, it's 25 to 30 grams for men. I think a little less for women,
Okay,
maybe
yeah.
like
So
20.
so I mean, this is like right in line with that, a little bit on the higher side, which I think, as we've talked about, like this is like that's a good thing to shoot for. And I also am a huge fan. Like, if you can get your fiber from whole foods, like you are going to have, you're probably doing a really good job of having a solid diet. And then 3 probiotic foods daily. Honestly, that seems like a lot. But as somebody that loves, I like, we have, kimchi, sauerkraut, yogurt, all kinds of fermented foods in our fridge. I wouldn't say that I eat 3 different probiotic foods a day. I probably have, I probably have a couple servings at least, but that's interesting. I feel like that is. I don't think that's a bad suggestion. I just think that's probably going to be the most challenging thing for people to, to stay up on.
Yeah, I generally agree. I've also seen fiber being prescribed as 15 grams for every 1,000 calories you eat. I think it was Peter Attia was pushing that prescription, and so 30 may even be a little low depending on how many calories you're eating. I
Yeah.
typically try to go for more like 40. I like this though. I think it's loosely prescriptive in terms of a diet, right? Like, it's more like guidelines or goals than it is like eat this, don't eat that. And I think as kind of pillars of eating, they're pretty good pillars. I'm with you. 3 probiotic foods is tough. I typically aim for 2. I'll have some yogurt in the morning, and I'll typically have a little sauerkraut or kimchi at dinner time. But yeah, I mean, I think it's a cool way to think about it. It's not a diet per se, but rather I think they are good kind of pillars of good nutrition.
Yeah, I'm into it. I think anything that, gives structure to people's nutrition without being like overly prohibitive is super important. And so if this is something that that works for some people, I love it. I'm all for it. Okay, Dylan, what say you about sauna after exercise?
I think it's awesome. I think it's fantastic. I think there's even some evidence that it can help with muscle building through some of the heat shock proteins that it activates. Can be good for recovery. I think it feels really good to get a good sweat, especially after like a strength training session. If you haven't, I'm a person who, when I strength train, I don't sweat a ton, and I love the way a good sweat feels. So, getting in the sauna for a little while after a workout is really beneficial from just that feeling of like sweating out the shit. What I will say, if you're gonna sauna regularly, especially if it's post workout, you'll certainly want to ensure that you're hydrating well. So, take a big bottle of water in there with you. Probably put some minerals in it to ensure that you're actually your cells are absorbing the water that you're drinking and you're actually getting hydrated. But yeah, I'm not a huge sauna user just because I don't have access to one right now. But I often wish that I did. I've even thought about making that investment for my home gym because I'd love to use it more, and I do think that there are tons of benefits to saunaing, even beyond just using it after a workout. Some of which are the studies around are maybe a bit soft, but the more of them that come out, the stronger the case is, and I think it's continuing to be studied. So, yeah, I'm a huge sauna fan. Using it after the workout's a good way to kind of stack the habit, especially if you're working out in a place that has a sauna.
Yeah, this was definitely a softball because we're going to get to some harder hitting stuff, a little down the line here. But you're exactly right. You nailed that one. As someone that is fortunate enough to have access to a sauna regularly, I absolutely love it. I love it for the cardiovascular benefits. I love it for the muscular recovery benefits. And then, even like there's a bunch talking about like increased endurance, the potential for muscle growth because of it. But then also, like you kind of hinted at, there are some studies, whether they're like the best done studies or not is certainly like able to be questioned, but like a lot of stuff showing just like general all cause mortality goes down the
Mm-hmm.
more that people sauna. So it's definitely something that I'm a big fan of, and I'm glad as the other co-founding member of this podcast that you're on board with it.
Yeah, I think I saw Peter Attia say the other day. He was quoting some of the sauna all-cause mortality rate improvements, and the prescription he gave, I believe, and we'll have to fact check this to be certain, but and you could look it up yourself, but it was around 20 minutes at a time, 3 times a week to get those benefits. So, if you're strength training to your question, if you're strength training 3 times a week for 45 to 60 minutes, if you have another 20 minutes to give, and the gym you're going to has a sauna, could be a great way to spend that time. All right. The next one I have for you is, what say you about 5x5 training?
Oh, good old fashioned 5x5s. It's actually interesting that you bring this up now because I have a not a client of mine in the gym, but just somebody a new friend in my life who also he rolls jujitsu and likes to strength train, a younger guy who is like exclusively trains 5x5s and was like flabbergasted at the concept of doing any other like rep and set scheme. And I think 5x5s are, I think they can be fun. I think they can be really beneficial. Especially if it's as we've said before, the best exercise is what you're currently not doing. So if you've never done 5x5s, and let me expand on this for people who might not know what a 5x5 is. It means 5 sets of an exercise for 5 reps. So that means it is super high weight for not a lot of reps, and then you do a bunch of sets. And you're accumulating volume over the course of the 5 sets, and this is generally paired with pretty extremely long rest times. 3 minutes being generally on the low end. I think they're great for maximal strength. I think as far as like a hypertrophy, like muscle building, quote unquote sculpting, type program, it's not something that I would go to regularly. But I also think it is a very high skill rep and set scheme. I think that if it's not something that I would recommend beginners or even like early intermediates be trying, because I think it requires a lot of trust and really excellent form, and just a lot of like gym know-how, because you are moving such heavy weight. And with those 5 sets, you can really get fatigued too. So I think that I think they're interesting. I am using them with a couple clients right now. So I'm certainly not against them, generally. But I do think that they need to be approached with caution. And if they are the only way you train, mix it up, buddy.
Yeah, and typically we're talking about compound movements.
True. Yes, exactly.
Yeah, and I like to mix it in here and there, to your point, just for the novelty benefits. It's a different way of training, a different adaptation to the body. But I'll typically, it's when I'm more in a strength building mode than a hypertrophy one, and it can be a fun way to train, heavier weight. But I'm with you. It's a bit more of an advanced technique. You might want to start with like 3x5 and work your way up to 5x5, because if we're talking 5 sets of those compound movements with heavier weight, that's a lot of wear and tear on the body. So if you're relatively new to the gym, it's probably not a good place to start. But your friend is the reason I asked the question is most people who swear by 5x5 training are probably a lot like your friend, right? Like people who love 5x5 training love 5x5 training and would probably benefit greatly from doing something other than 5x5 training.
Yeah, absolutely. Well said. I should say that it is something that I did utilize when I was building my bench press. I did a version of a 5x5. I called it more of like a 5 by 3 to 5. Work,
Mm-hmm.
and this I think is an important aspect of training, is looking at these sets, in rep ranges. 5 is our top target, but give yourself a little bit of flexibility, because if you're just pushing for 5 reps in a set because that's what the piece of paper says I have to do, you are setting yourself up for a miserable time in the gym, and definitely opening yourself up to the potential for injury. So I
Mm-hmm.
always like to, even if it's something as low as a 5x5, I still like to work in rep schemes, because I think it just gives you that freedom and that comfort to trust your body a little bit more.
Yeah.
Okay, Dylan, this is something that I was big into for a while. So what say you about mixing MCT oil in coffee?
You were big into this. It's kind of it's the brother to putting butter in your coffee.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly.
I I think for most people it's completely unnecessary. Um, we the majority of people get plenty of fat in their diet. We don't need to be adding any additional fat, no matter how healthy it may be. Um, it was made popular, I think, for some of its benefits as it related to like fasting while keeping you in some sort of a fasted state, but still giving you some calories, which doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me because if you're consuming calories, you're no longer in a fasted state. And came with these promises around like accelerating the fat burning process, which I think have been almost completely debunked. So, I think we've said before, if you want to add some fat to your coffee, add a little milk. One, it probably tastes better, and two, adding these sources of fat to your coffee is just totally unnecessary. Like it's not needed whatsoever.
Yeah, what they it got popular with the rise of the keto diet,
Yeah.
and so it was used in
Oh,
order
it
to
kept you
keep
maybe in ketosis, but not in a fasted state. Yeah.
exactly. Yep, because it's adding the fats of the MCT oils or butter. You know, that butter would do the same thing in this, or ghee would do the same thing in this scenario. It allegedly, is going to help the body enter slash maintain its state of ketosis, where it's burning fats instead of carbs. Uh, Here's the fact of the matter, folks. Unless you are strict about your keto diet, it ain't fucking keto. Okay, just because you ate a bunch of bacon and didn't have any carbs does not mean that you are in ketosis. Okay, this is a very specific process of the body, and just because you cut out carbs for a little while does not mean that you are attaining ketosis. So if you are somebody, a strict keto diet fan and a listener of this show, reach out. Actually, I would love to have a conversation with you because I can't imagine that there are too many of them out there. But if you are that person, then something like this makes sense. You also probably don't really care too much about how your like food and beverages taste, and like the mouthfeel to them, because that was even long before I even really like cared about coffee. I had to stop because it just like made me feel so gross. Just like sipping my like that oil along with coffee, it just was not an enjoyable experience at all.
Yeah. All right, I got another one for you, my friend. Let's find out what say you about low fat dairy.
Ugh, gross. No, I actually think that low fat dairy has a place. Especially if we're thinking about adding protein to the diet. Trying to get more protein while keeping calories low. It's a great option. Personally, if I'm going to enjoy my dairy, I'm going to just try and budget that into my calories for the day so that I can have the full fat stuff, because I do think that it is significantly more delicious that way. But no, I'm not a hater of non-fat dairy. I'm a huge hater of like skim milk, 1% milk, 2% milk, all those things. As the great Ron Swanson said, it's just water that's lying about being milk. But as far as like we usually keep, full fat yogurt and non-fat yogurt in the house, and depending on what I've eaten in a day, I will like I use them both. So I don't think it's inherently bad, but I also do want people to be cautious of just like demonizing fats. I think that's a slippery slope.
Yeah, well said. Dairy's so funny because like it has its moment as a health food, and then the next moment it's awful for you. And then we'll go on these roller coasters of it's got to be full fat dairy, or it's got to be low fat dairy, or it's got to be no fat dairy. I think just in summary, from my perspective, if you're watching your calories or trying to lose weight, low fat dairy is fantastic to your high protein, low fat, low calorie point. If you've got like high blood pressure or are watching your saturated fat intake, dairy's typically pretty high in saturated fat, so low-fat dairy is a great option for somebody that wants to monitor their saturated fat intake. So I think it can be great in those cases as well. But yeah, I mean, there's nothing inherently wrong with it, and in fact, it can have a lot of benefits depending on the type of person that you are.
Yeah, besides the fact that it just tastes gross
Tastes
sometimes.
way worse. It tastes way worse. Yeah, for the most part, it tastes way worse.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
Exactly. All right. This is I'm going to apologize in advance for this one, Dylan, because this is something that you and I have talked about off screen, off pod before. But I felt like it was finally time, and we talked about in the past about bringing this subject up on here, so it's not totally out of left field. But I want you to give the podcast people your thoughts on RFK and his Make America Healthy initiative.
Damn. Trying to get us in trouble, Matt.
No, this is it. This is how we go viral right here.
This is a no politics podcast, so I'm going to try to approach it as apolitically as possible. But maybe first I'll just say that I do think it's hilarious how critical he was of Trump until he needed him,
Yeah.
which probably says a lot about his character. The biggest criticism of him and his Make America Healthy Again movement is probably that he doesn't have the experience in health policy to do the job. I have some problems with that because, like, let's stop pretending like those that do or have in the past have our best interest in mind. Like, it's not exactly like America is the superiorly healthy nation. And I think it is important that we don't unilaterally categorize him as bad, right? There are many bad things that have been reported about him, notably his relationship with his wife or his ex-wife. But I'm also not sure that decency's been an important qualification for a leader in government or corporate America, for that matter, in quite a long time. So, and that's probably in large part how we got to where we are today. And then let's also keep in mind, like, the sensationalist motivations of the media around most topics. So, most of what we're hearing, we should always have some skepticism around, what we believe to be true. So maybe the best way to approach the question is just to reflect on his views on a few different topics. So he feels strongly that big food and big pharma are not working in the best interest of human health in the U.S. I think that's possibly the best thing about him being in this position, right? Like, it's ironically probably also the least Republican thing about him. The reason that food and pharma is so messed up in the U.S. is because in capitalist America, the primary responsibility of the CEOs of these companies is to maximize shareholder value. That means getting people to use their product. In food, that means it's got to be addictive. In pharma, that means you got to make sure people are sick and require your drugs. And you can make that tin hat as tall as you want, but those are just facts kind of underneath that hat. He's like promoting stuff like raw milk, which is just silly. Like, sounds so silly, but like, so our government requires that milk be pasteurized. There's many that believe, and I think it's proven, that that process destroys the vitamins, minerals, enzymes, fats that are healthy for us in the milk. So to drink it, healthy people will have to take on some risk of infection, right? When Courtney and I were pregnant, we read these books by Emily Oster. She's an economist who does some really good stuff around kind of looking statistically at probabilities of different childhood behaviors and parenting. And I read that she calculated the risk of infection from raw milk is 7 in 100,000 raw milk drinkers. So that, I don't know that a risk like that should be outlawed by the government, right? Like, I mean, soft cheese carries similar risks. That's not outlawed. So, and like, what's the long-term health risk of all these ultra-processed foods that are so prevalent in our diets today? So I'm not sure that, like, everybody's like, oh no, he's pushing raw milk. I'm not sure that the risk of raw milk is as crazy as maybe the media is projecting. I mean, everybody's talking about his vaccine positions, right? Like as it relates to COVID and the COVID vaccine, his stance was mostly right all along. It was over injected. The benefits around lack of transmission were overpromised, and lockdowns likely did more harm than good, especially with children. You can argue why it was pushed or rolled out the way it was, but I don't think we should crucify him for his advocacy as a citizen at that point in time. On the childhood vaccine front and its links with autism, his stances might be a little more dangerous there. Every epidemiological study on the MMR vaccine, for example, and its association with autism is confirmed zero association. But and that type of skepticism from a major public health official can have some more serious implications if enough people buy into it and stop vaccinating for these things. We could have outbreaks again, and it could lead to seriously negative consequences for children. But like this is also nuanced. There's been a shocking increase in childhood autism, and that should definitely be studied more thoroughly. So if his ambition is to come in and look into that further so that we can resolve that problem, I think that's good. So I won't go through all his stances, but I think the important point is that we assess each of his stances, each of them on their merits, and not unilaterally rule them out as crazy on party lines. Like he's probably not a great guy, but I'm not. I think a shakeup in the food, pharmaceutical, and healthcare industries is probably for the better at this point.
I think you nailed that. I think you've absolutely nailed that. Well said. Round of applause for Dylan, everybody. That
I've been
was, I
thinking
think
about
that
it a
was,
lot.
yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
that was great. I do think that, he brings, calls to attention a lot of things that are just kind of getting swept under the rug in America today. The chronic disease epidemic, and the preventable ways that we can make people healthier. Talking about something that he does have a lot of background in. The environmental health factors.
hmm
Um, Encouraging personal accountability. If you are worried about raw milk, don't drink it. You know,
right.
like he's not saying that all milk needs to be replaced with raw milk, and you have to drink it. He's encouraging the power to be put back into the people's hands instead of food manufacturers, big pharma, etc. The biggest issue that I have, with all of this is just the execution challenges. I suppose is
Yeah.
it's he's claiming all these ambitious initiatives, and is trying to he's saying all these changes that he wants to make, but until there is a clear actionable plan, it's just going to be another one of those slogans, instead of an
Yeah.
actual movement. And so I do think that I think there's a lot of potential good. I also just worry that the American political system, with how divisive it is just going to railroad any potential positive effects at every turn.
Yeah, it's another situation where I think, man, people would be so much happier if they just looked for the good in the things that they assume to be the worst. Like life will just be much better that way. Like it doesn't not everything we hear that's so awful about everybody is true all of the time. And maybe spend a little time looking into some things you might agree with or could be supportive of or could benefit your life that exist within there, because at the end of the day you don't have any control over any of it. This shit's going to happen either way. I'm with you on the execution point. I'm a little afraid as quickly as he was swayed by Donald Trump, who he was so adversarial to for so long, that the minute these food and pharma companies have some pull over him or get in his pocket, that things could change. But yeah, I remain very firm that like it sounds conspiratorial, but like the food that's mass produced in the U.S. is not great for us. And pharma and healthcare companies are massive, dependent upon sick people. And in a capitalist society where these companies again are striving for shareholder value, the way that they continue to thrive is by giving us food that makes us sick and then treating the illness. And as conspiratorial as that may sound, there has to be some truth in it, and that does need to be resolved. So if he's going to come in and take on this role, I hope he's willing to kind of test some of these things because they do need it.
Beautiful. All right. Should we do one more?
We can do one more. And since you hit me with a hammer, I'm gonna hit you with a topical, maybe
Okay.
testy topic as well. So I want to know what say you about the assassination, perhaps, of the United Healthcare CEO.
Okay. All right. Um, I mean, this actually it's a really it's the most interesting story that I can think of in a long ass time, maybe ever, maybe in my entire life. Obviously, anytime that somebody gets murdered, there's it's tragic, and he was the CEO of United Healthcare, even though like now with all the like fucking like rabbit hole videos, like he's the CEO of a section of United Healthcare, whatever. All these big companies, like there's so many people that are actually in charge, and they set it up that way to be confusing and have keep a lot of people in power. You can two things can be true at the same time. This can be a tragedy, and we should be sad for the victim's family and friends, while really being you know like interested in what is going on. What the response by the country is saying. I mean, it has been really wild to see how many people from all walks of life and sides of the aisle, step up you know, and talk about their anger with the healthcare system and being, feeling like this was in a sense, justified, not at the individual, but, more a statement on the system. And, obviously that justification is, misplaced, but there's such a lack of trust with the people and the people in power. And one of the most one of the systems where that is so abundantly clear is our healthcare system. There are so many situations where our healthcare system is more interested in corporate profits than helping the people that they should be. Denying insurance claims for shareholders benefit. And I think that there is so much wrong with the system. And there it's people are obviously finally fed up enough to take actions into their own hands. And while I don't think that ever should be requiring somebody to lose their life, I do really hope that this shockwave will make some opportunities for conversations to be had about how changes can be made in the healthcare system. How people could get this lost and upset, to feel the need to take this action. I also just think it's a really just it's a wild it's a wild story. I mean, the from fleeing on a city bike to getting on a bus at Port Authority to being arrested at a McDonald's in Altoona, Pennsylvania, with allegedly still the murder weapon and a manifesto on him, and this guy not really like fitting the bill of a lot of these, kind of like lone gunman types, coming from a wealthy family, not really seeming like he has a ton of mental health issues. It's a really bizarre story. And, it's just like, it's something I am having a really hard time taking my eyes off of.
Yeah, I feel similarly. The problem here is when we live in a country where so much of the wealth is concentrated at the top. You end up with these people in positions of corporate power where their sole duty and responsibility is to the really wealthy people that have shares in their company. And so their remit, their ambition is simply to maximize that shareholder value at any cost. And so he likely has indirectly tens of thousands of deaths on his hands. Like it's maybe a stretch or an awful thing to say, but there's likely some truth in that. You can make a similar case for Tim Cook and Apple putting little cell phones in the hands of children, or Mark Zuckerberg and Facebook and all of the negative, consequences we know about social media and its impact on kids and young girls and women. So like it's tough because this is sort of what capitalism drives towards, and I'm not suggesting that capitalism is wrong, but rather that you've got this disproportionate distribution of wealth, and you have politicians, to the point about RFK Jr. and food and pharma before, in the pockets of the people that make our policies, and they just have too much power and control over people's day-to-day lives, some of which we're aware of, some of which we're not even aware of. And it's awful that he died. He left behind a family. It shouldn't have come to this, but it has been really interesting to see how strangely unifying the murder of a man has been for people around the challenges that exist with regards to the consequences of the actions of these people in power. And I'm nervous that the response to this is going to be you're just going to see big corporations spend more on security for their C-suites. Like I'm pessimistic that anything's actually going to come of it, because at the end of the day, that boardroom is still going to set the expectation for that CEO to deliver maximum shareholder value at any cost, and that's what they're going to continue to do, because that's how the rich stay rich and the powerful stay powerful. So it's sad.
Amen,
Sad for
brother.
many reasons. Yeah.
Yeah, it is sad. All right. Do you want me to ask one more, or should we end it on that?
Do you have a happy one?
Well, this is, I mean, it's not happy, but it's something that is a little bit more directly tied to the purpose of the podcast, and that's informing people on their health and wellness decisions. So this one,
I'll be quick.
actually, it got brought up at the gym today. One of the ladies there asked me my opinion on branched chain amino acids and whether or not she should be taking them. And I said, "Ho, just you wait, little lady. Listen to the podcast, because I'm going to have Dylan. Tell you how he feels about branched chain amino acids."
Yeah, almost universally, no, you should not be taking them. Branched chain amino acids, in the context of a diet that gets enough protein, are all but completely useless. So if, I would encourage you to encourage your client, which I'm sure you have, to aim for a specific protein goal based on her goals. And so long as you're hitting that, supplementing with BCAAs is going to do nothing at all. Now, if you are having trouble with that, the next place I would turn to is some sort of protein supplement, like a whey protein or a plant-based protein. That's going to provide you with all 9 of the essential amino acids, not just the branched chain amino acids, which are critically important for your protein-related goals. And if if you're still struggling with the protein supplement, you could look to an essential amino acid supplement, so EAAs, where different from the BCAAs, you're going to get again all 9 of those essential amino acids that you need. So the challenge or struggle that I have with supplementation of protein in general is that it's typically significantly less satiating. So by eating the protein, you're getting the sustenance from the food. Therefore, it's helping to curb your appetite, not leading you to overeating other things that are maybe less good for you. But I also recognize I'm a person where, like, if I'm aiming to eat a gram of protein per pound of body weight, there's days where eating, 180, 190 grams of protein is difficult for me. And so on those days, I will supplement with some sort of protein supplement. But typically, EAAs and BCAAs are significantly more expensive than other supplements, and the bang is just really not there for the buck. The only people that could maybe benefit from BCAA supplements are like hardcore strength training athletes, whether it's powerlifting or bodybuilding. But beyond that, it's a complete waste of money. So I'd steer you away completely.
Yeah, perfectly said. Unless you are on the cutting edge of performance and are wealthy, uh, there are better ways to get your amino acids.
Church.
All right, that's it for another edition of What Say You. That was a good one, Dylan. I had fun with
Yeah,
that.
man.
Got a little real, got a little heavy, but we still, we brought it home. I think we landed the plane. The Q&A comes from another client of mine, and this one, the question today is, what do you guys prefer, free weights or machines?
Oh, fun question. I'll go first. I prefer. I have two answers. Whatever you have access to and are going to use would be answer one. And then answer two after that, if you're saying I have access to both or I'd use either, I'd use the one that I haven't been using recently. So, again, the best form of exercise is the one you're going to do. If you prefer the machines to the free weights, do the free weights. I personally prefer the free weights. I do think there's some additional muscle building potential that exists within the free weights that you may not get from the machines, due to them not being on a kind of a fixed plane, requiring some of your stabilizer muscles to move the weights. But that being said, there's nothing wrong with the machines, especially if you're relatively new to the gym, can be a good way to kind of start to build some muscle. And to my second point, if you've only ever trained with free weights, looking to those more fixed implement machines can be fantastic for introducing some novelty to your workout. And novelty can be incredibly important to success, to results, to building muscle. So you don't want too much novelty. I wouldn't go back and forth on a daily basis between the two. I would, again, think of it in seasons, program for, a few weeks with the free weights, program then for the next few weeks with the machines. And then the last thing I'll note on the machines front is if you're really focusing on hypertrophy and targeting specific muscles, they can be great because they're on that fixed plane. You can get some of those stabilizers out of the movement and really focus on just moving the chest or just moving the bicep or just moving the quad or the hamstring. So they're both good. It just depends on kind of where you're at, and you should seek out the benefits in both and try to figure out how to make them both work if you can. If I could only take one, I'd take the free weight.
Yeah, I would. If I could only take one, I would take the free weights too. But man, I would miss my machines, man.
Yeah.
I love like the biggest point here for me is if you don't know when we talk about like the pump, like the muscle pump,
Mhm.
if when we talk about that, if you don't know that feeling, then there is no easier way to get it than hopping on machines because the benefit of using machines over free weights is all of that external stabilization that goes on, which really allows you to get down and dirty with whatever particular muscle you are trying to bias in that move or muscle group. And because of all the external stability, you can get right up to failure. Where
Hmm.
sometimes, a lot of times with dumbbells or barbells or any of these like, free weight options, you got to be careful of failure because you got to make sure that those weights land properly, and you're in a place where you can drop them or without hurting yourself or others. When you can't do any more on a leg extension, the machine's just not going to move anywhere, and so you can really get comfortable with failure. You can figure out exactly how many reps you have in the tank on a particular exercise. And man, like if I'm just looking for a quick pump, like I'll just go hit some machines real quick, go, do a couple sets to failure. And, there's no, more effective way to get that feeling for me. But I'm with you. I love them both. And I think that there's a ton of benefit to free weights. I would never train with just machines personally. Sorry, Ben Yanes.
I want every listener of the Better Basics podcast before the end of the year that hasn't experienced a pump to experience a pump. So I'm gonna give you all the prescription for doing that. Because
Ooh,
it's awesome. It's the best feeling in the world. You feel like a brick shit house. Like your muscles will just literally turn into stones. What you're gonna do is the night before you're gonna work out, you're gonna eat a super high carbohydrate meal. Like have a big ass bowl of pasta. And then right before your workout, you're gonna consume some salt, some sodium, like a half a gram of sodium, maybe a gram, depending on if you have concerns around your salt consumption. But and drink that with some water right before your workout, and then go do some higher rep for the purposes of knowing what it feels like arm work on machines, and you will love it. It is so fun. So that's your homework, listeners. To if you've never gotten a good pump before, go seek out a good pump because it will fire you up to be in the gym and stay in the gym.
I love it. That is just some good, fun, free advice right there, everybody. So please, and take a picture of your pump and
Yeah.
send it over to the Better Basics podcast Instagram page so that Dylan can take a peek at that. All right. Let's bring it on home. It is everybody's favorite way to end a podcast in the history of podcasts. It is the I Lift a Sad Song of the week. Dylan, it is your sad song.
Is it?
Yeah, I did.
No.
I did Pieces by Sum 41 last time, didn't I?
Oh shit! I thought I did that song by that woman that I never heard
Oh,
of before.
Chaperone. No, you totally
No,
did.
did I?
Ah,
I was
man.
I was totally prepared for it to be you.
Okay.
So
Uh,
well we could just have a race to see who can come up with one first.
well, I've got one. I've got one. And this is, yeah, it's it's definitely a sad song. It was quite popular. It's from our boys in Green Day. It's Boulevard of Broken Dreams,
Wow.
dude.
Oh man, that is a grade school cut.
It is a great school cut. But if that song comes on when you're trying to get a little lift on, little lift in, you're gonna find something that you're gonna find that pump. So check it out, Boulevard of Broken Dreams by Green Day.
Hell yeah.
Peace.